After a horrific car crash, Emma brings her wife home from the hospital, only to be met with a visceral alarm. The woman standing in her kitchen feels completely wrong. The replacement centers on the terror of a perfect, hollow imitation sleeping in your bed. It moves and speaks like a loved one, but every interaction suggests a void where a soul should be. This timeline shows the fracture at the point of impact. When the car hits the shadow, Emma's shared reality ends. Her desperate need for her wife to be alive creates a psychological vacuum, a dashed line where her mind refuses to let the story stop. The mind will go to extreme lengths to avoid processing sudden trauma. It will invent or willingly accept horrifying loopholes if it means keeping a loved one's memory physically present. Domestic life resumes, but it is fueled by Emma's survival instinct. She enters the denial phase of grief, actively ignoring creeping red flags to protect her fragile new reality. In the hospital, the anomalies start with a physical delay. When Emma reaches for a hug, Sarah stands perfectly still for several seconds. When she finally responds, the grip is crushing, far tighter than a human embrace should be. The behavioral masks slip further the next morning. Sarah stands at the stove cooking a pan of eggs, a food she has historically despised, and lets them burn without a word. When Emma points out the burnt food, Sarah smiles and recites the phrase, "People change." Emma accepts the excuse. Her grieving brain rationalizes the impossible, because the alternative is admitting her wife died in the rain. This graph maps the uncanny valley, where human likeness meets emotional revulsion. Notice the plunge right before a perfect human match. Sarah's robotic delivery places her at the bottom of this dip. She looks like a spouse, but her unnatural rhythm triggers a primal alarm. This sense of wrongness is validated from the outside. Sarah's sister sends frantic texts, revealing that the entity has completely forgotten her own niece's name. The glitches move from social errors to biological impossibilities. At night, Emma watches the thing in her bed. It lies completely still for hours. No tossing, no turning, and no visible breath. The imitation's programming is breaking down under the weight of mimicking a human life, causing the uncanny valley effect to widen by the hour. Emma shifts from passive denial to active bargaining. She begins testing the entity, hoping to find a logical reason for the strange behavior. She sets a trap by asking about a specific memory, a restaurant they visited in Chicago after a bad storm. The entity pauses, its face going blank while it searches for a file that doesn't exist. It smiles and gives the wrong answer, confirming it possesses no shared history. The performance drops completely in the dark of the bedroom. The entity turns its unblinking eyes to Emma and whispers, "You know." With the illusion shattered, the bargaining phase ends. Emma is forced to look at the entity and recognize that her wife is truly gone. Emma retreats to the basement, searching for any scrap of evidence that explains what happened the night of the crash. She finds a note scrawled by a nurse on the discharge papers. It describes the patient speaking to an empty corner of the hospital room, repeating the phrase, "She let me wear her face." The entity meets Emma on the basement stairs. It abandons its mimicry, tilting its head in confusion as it admits the real Sarah died in the rain. The thing appears genuinely sad, stating it is trying to be what Emma needs. It claims its only motivation was to ensure Emma wouldn't have to be alone. This entity functions as a byproduct of Emma's own refusal to mourn. It fills the vacuum Sarah left behind, utilizing the vulnerability of unaddressed loss to ground itself in the physical world. Faster, more urgent. Emma locks herself in the bedroom, but the entity begins to drop all pretense of physical limits. It warps the wood of the door as it screams in a distorted voice that it can be better. The violence stops as suddenly as it began. The entity's voice returns to a warm, loving tone, calmly announcing that dinner is ready. In the kitchen, Sarah stands perfectly still, acting as if nothing happened. Then she blinks her eyes, one at a time. Emma doesn't run. She walks to the table and sits down. This represents a terrifying arrival at the final stage of grief, acceptance. The replacement suggests the pain of isolation is so heavy, a person might willingly sit down to dinner with the thing that replaced their spouse. Grief creates the opening, and the wrong thing walks in.